Welcome to Coastal Voices, the show that brings you stories about life on Hatteras Island. This is Susan West, your host for the evening. The stories you'll hear tonight capture the spirit of people from Rodanthe to Hatteras Village. The storytellers come from all walks of life, and topics include everything from childhood memories to fish tales, community traditions to big storms, hard work to daring adventures. The stories are from recordings collected by local volunteers in the Coastal Voices Oral History Project. You'll meet some of those volunteers in the show tonight. To learn more about the project, please visit our website at carolinacoastalvoices.com. Mary Gray of Avon recalls how World War II impacted daily life on Hatteras Island. Amy Glass interviewed Mrs. Gray in 1988 for the Southern Oral History Program. The Outer Banks Community Foundation provided funds to digitize the original recording.
I remember hearing the explosions off in the ocean, and one night, I think the hospital ship and something else collided, and it almost threw you off the bed, the concussion from it was so loud. And we had to keep our windows blackened, blankets or something over the windows, to keep the enemy from seeing a spark of light. And they had an army jeep that ran through the community. If they saw a spark of light through the window, they'd rap on your door and tell you to shut it off. It was trying times, I'll tell you. Well, it wasn't the whole time. I don't remember how long, but those special times that we had to. And my parents were sleeping over there one night, and they always declared they heard a shell pass, zoop right by the house from the ocean, they thought. It was that bad. And we could see ships burning out there.
Mark Jordana first visited Hatteras Island in 1963. In 1967, his parents built a cottage in Hatteras Colony in Avon. In an interview with Susan West, Mark talks about his father buying the Avon fishing pier in 1970. Your dad had something to do with the Avon pier. What happened there?
Well, I guess that, my dad had befriended Dewey Scarborough through the process of building the house there. And he had mentioned to Dewey that, I'd love to have a business down here someday. And sometime, I believe in early 1970, we were down here at our cottage, and Dewey came over and said, "Hey Joe, were you really serious about having a business down here?" And my dad, not knowing what he was getting himself into, said, "Yeah, sure, that seems like a great idea." And Dewey said, "Well, the Avon fishing pier is for sale." So Dewey introduced my dad to the owner group, and as I recall, and I'm not sure about the exact dates, but I believe the pier was originally built in 1964, so this would have been 6 years later, and I believe that was the original ownership group that was selling it.
Sold the pier to your dad. Did he have partners?
Yeah, it turned out that he had most of the gentlemen that had been coming down as a group to go on vacation join in. So it was my father, Joe Jordana, and then Harris Havert, who is David Havert's father, who ended up being a resident of Avon a few years later, Mr. Homero Vega, who was actually a Mexican citizen in the Mexican Navy, worked in the Mexican Embassy in Washington, D.C., but was our neighbor in Washington. And Mr. Vega also had a cottage at the opposite end of Beachcomber, and two of his grandsons now have a surf shop in Avon that they've had for years. There was Jack Cushing, who is the one that originally introduced us down here and ended up being a longtime resident on the Outer Banks. And then there was a gentleman named Joe Ryan who had brought his family from the very beginning back in 1963. And I believe Joe bought lots also in Beachcomber, but I don't believe he ever built a house. So those were the 5 partners, along with Dewey, who put together this prospective ownership group to purchase the pier.
Do you have any idea how much they paid for the pier?
I don't know the exact numbers, but I always recall hearing that they bought the pier for about $100,000 in 1970.
Okay, so now your dad and his partners own a pier. Who ran the pier?
Well, Jack Cushing still worked for the Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C. He actually had a pretty good federal job. He was a relatively young man, probably less than 40 years old, and had probably a very bright future with the federal government. And he somehow convinced his wife, Ellie, and quit the whole thing and volunteered to come down and live on the island and be the manager of the pier. So Jack came down and ended up, buying a house in Buxton and working on the pier in those early years.
Loretta Oneill of Buxton recalls the home remedies used to treat snake bites and other injuries.
For instance, if you got bit by a snake, there was an elderly lady, real old elderly lady that lived here named Miss Rovine Quidley. And she would make all kinds of salves out of leaves and different things. And my mother's youngest brother got bit by a snake on his foot one day. And my grandmother rushed him to her. And honey, she fixed what she called this bolus of all this, I think it was Octagon soap and salve and all kinds of stuff mixed together. But it drew all that poison out of his foot. And he lived. Yeah. If we got bit by a wasp, somebody always grabbed a little bit of snuff and rubbed on wherever the wasp bit us, and that would draw the poison out of it. Or if we stepped on a nail, they'd grab a piece of salt pork and tie it, put a little kerosene on it, tie it to the place where the nail went. That would draw out the poison.
Oh my goodness.
It was amazing. Today they'd think, oh, she's lying and making up that stuff. But hey, I'm telling you, it was the truth.
So there wasn't really a doctor here.
No, and let me tell you another one. My grandfather, if someone got a real bad toothache, lots of people would go to my grandfather Kit. He would take a pair of pliers and pull the tooth out for them. Ooh. And then pray that they didn't get blood poison. Oh.
L.P. O'Neill of Avon talks about the days when a fish house in Pamlico Sound served the village. Mr. O'Neill was interviewed in 2004 by Barbara Garrity Blake for the Cape Hatteras National Seashore Ethnohistory Project. The Outer Banks Community Foundation provided funds to digitize the original recording.
And do you remember when they used to have, what were they called, buy boats? Where they would buy the fish off the fishermen and haul them away?
Well, we used to have a fish house. When I was a kid, there was a fish house was out here in the Sound.
Oh, tell me about that, because I remember hearing something about that.
Where the, right close to where Daddy sunk the bug eye. It was right across the channel.
The fish house was out on stilts?
Yeah, it built. Yeah, it had a big hole in the floor, and the little boat would go under the fish house, and they drop a basket down. They put the fish in it, and they pull it up.
Really?
Yeah.
And that was because it was a little bit deeper out there?
It was deep. Well, and another reason was there was the fuel barge used to come down here, tie up out there, and they pumped gas and kerosene, which they had tanks on the shore side, and there was iron pipes laid under the water, and the fish house out there, they tie up to get, and the oil boat would pump the oil through the tanks on the shore.
And then what would they use it for on shore? People's houses?
You know, gas boats, cars, and kerosene. The first year that they moved in this house was July in 1930. My mother told my father they had a wood stove. One of them great big old ranges like they used to use them days.
Mm-hmm.
My mother told Dad, he said, if you want me to cook again next year, you better buy me an oil stove because I'm not going to have this wood stove in it. Can you imagine? That little kitchen's half of this size here, and they had that wood stove in there. Can you imagine in July cooking fried spots out there in that little kitchen? So he bought her a Aladdin oil stove. It was beautiful. I remember the color. It was beautiful. But those wood stoves made better biscuits.
Did it?
Oh, yeah.
Did they taste better? They had that wood
Yeah,
smell?
they did. Oh,
Wood
God, they had that
taste?
smoky. Oh, God,
my
you talk about good. Wow.
Is that how they cooked on the boat, too? With
Yeah, my
with
father,
wood?
yeah, I still got the pan he cooked biscuits in on
And
the
he
boat.
put wood in the boat and lit it on
Yeah,
fire.
we carried wood, yeah, that's right. And the water, we had a barrel up there on the Missouri, right as you come out that little hatch up forward where the stove is. They had a water barrel there. And the water in that barrel always tasted sweet.
Kathy James of Buxton talks about her husband, Ted James, and about Fox surfboards. And so when did you get married?
1971, as soon as I graduated from high school. So, yeah, we were like dating for a year and a half or so.
When you were first married, he was making surfboards?
Yeah, he had the factory there in Lantana, and it was Fox Surfing Products he incorporated, and he was selling them up and down the East Coast. And let's see, in 1972, when Teddy was a baby, we went a cross-country trip to a surf contest in California in our Volkswagen van. While we were still dating, when I was in high school, he went to the World Championships in Australia to surf in the contest. Yeah, I still have letters that he wrote me from then.
And did Ted come from a surfing family?
No. He came from a Southern Baptist grocery store family. Winn-Dixie, they were all in Winn-Dixie. His father and his brothers were all like executives in Winn-Dixie. And he was the black sheep of the family, they say. He fished, grew up fishing. That was his first love. I guess when he went to college, he started surfing maybe. And
did he go to college in Florida?
at Florida Southern, he was there for 3.5 years. He dropped out his senior year. He said he'd had it and went to California to live and surf.
Okay.
And then to Hawaii. He lived in Hawaii for a little while, and I guess he learned to shape out there.
And did he have partners?
No, he established the label by himself in Florida and opened the factory and started doing the Fox label there. But he acquired partners as the business got going, and in the 70s. And John Parton and Louis Graves, they were both surfers down there. They set up a store in South Beach in Miami. And Lewis ran that one, and then there was somebody else, and I can't remember his name. I have pictures of him that did one in Fort Pierce, a shop in Fort Pierce.
So they had several stores in Florida.
Yeah, and then John Parton took over the West Palm Beach because we moved up here, lock, stock, and barrel in '76.
Well, tell me how that happened.
We were on a surf trip to Puerto Rico when Teddy was little. He was like 2, and Bob Barris and Stuart Couch and all that crew were down there surfing. We were going to do a surf shop and live down there in Puerto Rico. But when Teddy came and he met those guys and they told him how great it was up here, we thought, well, he thought it would be better to stay in the States with children. So we did a couple surf trips up here for the surf contest, the East Coast Surfing Championships. And so he's kind of got the feel for it then, too. I got pregnant with Sarah. We went back to Florida, and I had Sarah in February of '76. And that's when we packed everything up, and he must have got the option to buy in the works because we came back up lock, stock, and barrel. John Parton came up with his crew, and they built the store, the original store.
In the early days, what was the shop like, or who worked there? Was it Ted making boards by himself? Or?
Well, there was a garden shed in the back that went along with the property, and that's where he started glassing out of that. Or shaping and glassing out of that. Donnie shaped and glassed in that thing.
Donnie Bowers?
Yes.
Okay.
Because he came to work for us while he was still in high school, doing ding repair and learning how to shape and glass from Ted.
George Pratt discusses his personal thoughts on the loss of beach access on Hatteras Island. He was interviewed by Sandy Jones Garrison on June 16, 2014.
I like better access to the beaches. I mean, that's really, I get, every now and then I get depressed about that, but I decide, no, I'm just not, I don't talk about it to people oftentimes anymore. It's not just the fishing. Fishing is a social occasion here at Hatteras Island. When you go out and fish, we talked about keeping secrets of secret fishing places. Usually you go and there are people you know there, and you talk and you meet. There used to be large numbers of people, say for example, that I used to come here in early June for a week, and there were lots of other people that would come at the same time. And we would meet out on the beach every year, and it would be like a reunion. You just don't have those opportunities, so it's really cuts down on your social life as well as just fishing as an activity. So that's a major part of it. It's not like you're out there in isolation.
In an interview with Susan West, Therese Array of Ocracoke talks about being a female commercial fisherman.
I enjoy it. I love what I do. You know, I just take every day.
Are you okay with being called a commercial fisherman? I mean, has anybody ever called you a fisher?
Fisher? No, I've never been called a fisher.
If you were filling out an application for a loan or another job, what would you put as your
I would just put fisherman, commercial fisherman.
Okay.
I mean, that's just the men, you know, we're all man, you know, we're all human beings, but, you know, sexually, yes, I'm a woman, but, you know, I'm not trying to be the Shannon Faulkner of fishing, you know, like, I'm just doing it because I dig it. I love living on this island. It's the most beautiful place, and it's kind of like, I've always felt I could do more than just what everybody does. Not that I feel like I'm any better of a person. I'm not any better than any other woman that would rather just
the run-of-the-mill type jobs.
Yeah, you know,
you wanted something different.
Yeah, I wanted something challenging, mentally, physically, something to challenge. You know, it takes a lot of gumption to get up every day to go out there on the water. You know, when the weather's, you know, just horrific.
Are there other women here on Ocracoke who fish?
No. There is a woman, Arlene Burley. She clams. She's a clammer.
Okay.
I wouldn't consider her a fisherman. But so she works on the water definitely. But other than myself, I think Ellen Gaskell does a little bit with her husband, James Berry. But I'm pretty much it.
Is that a challenge, or do you feel like a minority? Or
well, yeah, I think it's definitely a minority. But I think, you know, maybe it can intrigue some young girl. You know, when the school kids come in here, you know, I do pull, you know, young girls aside and say, hey, you can do this. Don't let any man or woman tell you that you cannot. That bothers me when people tell somebody what they can and cannot do. You know, but I hope I inspire younger women or older women or whomever, you know, to get out and just do what you want to do, you know. I would always make a point to, you know, even if I was done packing out our fish, you know, the next group of guys that come through, I'm always like, hey man, what can I do to help you out? Like, I'll just be like, hey, I'll be glad to help you out. And, you know, they see that I'm here helping them. And I don't get paid for it, you know. I'm just like, you know, you have a boatload full of mullets. Let me jump down in there and help you pick them out, you know, and I just do it.
Wayne Gray, who was born in Avon in 1940, talks about hurricanes in an interview with Barbara Garrity Blake. The interview took place in 2004 for the Cape Hatteras National Seashore Ethnohistory Project. The Outer Banks Community Foundation provided funds to digitize the original recording.
Last time I was here, it was right after Hurricane Isabel. And I don't think there was access to Hatteras Island at the time. And you were talking about the different ways people used to deal with hurricanes compared with today. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, when I was a kid at Avon, we didn't know a hurricane was coming. You know, the old people would say, boy, it sure looks like a hurricane.
Mm-hmm.
We had radios, but they were battery radios. Radio was that big, with a battery that big, and a wire right out the window. We didn't have one, but other people did. There was no person-to-person radios like we have today, you know, like police radios. People just felt there was a storm coming, and finally it got there, and when they left, everybody just went on about their business. It seemed to me like.
Yeah.
I don't remember it ever being made a big deal.
Did you ever go through a big storm while you were living there?
Yeah, sure did, but I don't remember it as a big deal, you know.
Right.
Water come up in the house, but the next day it was over.
Yeah.
There was nothing that could hurt. They wash your house around a little bit, but I mean, as far as doing a lot of damage,
Do you remember how your parents used to prepare at all?
they didn't.
Really?
No.
Huh.
I don't remember them preparing.
Yeah.
And life went on normal. And if we got one, I guess we stayed inside. But I remember a lot of times we'd go down to the harbor and stay on the fish dock. The guys would, the men and young kids. But I don't remember it being made a big deal.
Yeah.
We never lost anybody.
And you'd have water come in the house,
Yeah.
and then it would go out, and would you
Yeah.
have mud in your house?
Oh, yeah.
So what'd you have to do? Just,
Buckets of water and wash it out.
and that was it.
That was it. Yeah, that was it.
And nowadays, the helicopters start coming overhead, and
Oh, yeah.
FEMA, and
Yep.
do you think after a bad hurricane, would the government send anybody down to check on the villagers?
The only time I remember was in Hurricane Gloria in '85. That's the first time I remember people coming on the island to help people.
Mm-hmm.
And they sent the
85.
National Guard down there, yeah. And they come in the village and just help people get back on their feet. But now, you know, something happens now, it's as fast as they can get people down there to help. When I worked down there, one night we had 17 troopers come on the island one time. Convoy of 17 to come out of North Carolina. And that was unheard of. That's the first time.
What hurricane was that for?
That was 93, 92.
Emily, maybe?
Emily, yeah.
Yeah.
And they had the National Guard down there. But the island is so built up now that they need help. And when I was a kid, how were they going to help us? You know, we didn't have anything. People took care of their house, and they took care of their boat, and parked their car on a hill.
Right.
You know, how are they going to help us? So they didn't. They didn't come down there.
Barbara Williams and her husband Johnny of Buxton talk about the stores and the post office in the village when Barbara was a child. You had mentioned one store here. Were there several stores in Buxton?
Yes. Let's see. There was George Fuller and Edgar Hooper together. They had the big store across from Carol Dillon's places on the corner. In that store, they had a soda fountain, like a little bar where you could get milkshakes and Cokes and stuff. And he had seats for everybody up at the counter.
And did they sell regular groceries?
They had groceries. It was a grocery store. And then on one end of the grocery store was this fountain that we all went to. And then on the other end of that building was a dress shop called Orman's. And she carried a lot of clothes in there. Bathing suits, dresses, shoes, a lot of things.
Where was the post office here in Buxton?
At that time it was Miss Maud was the postmaster for many, many, many years. And it was the starting of that long building of George Fuller's and Edgar's. It was a little building right on that corner.
And Miss Maud, what was her last name?
White. Maud White.
You could go to that area and you could get your mail and you could get a milkshake and your
Address.
just about everything.
Yeah.
Like a little mini department store there.
It was nice.
Do you remember how the mail got here?
Johnny, come help us out. Or help me out. I'm talking about Maud White's post office now. How did the mail get here?
Mailboat.
Mailboat at that time?
Yeah.
Do you know where the mailboat came in?
Yes, ma'am. It's about 30 yards from my boat. Down back of the post office. The stop is still there, believe it or not. It's rusted off, but it's still there.
Oh my goodness, that's hard to believe.
Yeah.
So the boat came, well, I guess that little road is called Mail Landing
Mailboat
Road.
Landing.
Yeah, okay.
That's where it got its name.
And
Leon Jeanette named it.
And if the mail was late, I remember this, even at night, Miss Maud would put that mail in everybody's boxes. It wasn't closed at 4 o'clock.
Avon, formerly Kinnikeet, North Carolina, had its own school at one time before all the village schools were consolidated to Buxton in 1950. Virginia ONeill Scarborough describes her school life to Sandy Jones Garrison, March 16, 2015. When you were growing up, where did you go to school?
I had already finished school when they started the school to Buxton.
So you went to school in Kinnikeet,
Yeah.
but on the ocean side?
No, it was about where the fire station is now. Might have been just a hair further down. You had to pass the fire station.
Everybody attended there? Whether you were in first grade or a high school
Yeah.
student?
Yeah.
So how many years did you go there? Did you graduate from there?
Yeah, they only had the 11th grade then. And I graduated in June and was married in December. And I had already got married when they started 12th grade. Now the 12th grade only stayed here 1 year, and then they consolidated the schools to Buxton. It had Rodanthe, Silo, and Waves, and then Hatteras, Frisco, and Buxton. It was a good move.
It was? Why do you think that was a good move?
Well, the children, they knew each other and each other's friends, and to me that was very important.
Mm-hmm. And how many teachers?
I think one teacher taught about 3 classes.
Do you remember any of your teachers, Virginia?
Well, my main teacher was Mabel. She married down here, and she was from Point Harbor. She taught me almost my whole high school.
She did. Do you remember Mabel's last name?
Meekins.
Oh, she was a Meekins.
Yeah.
So she married a Meekins.
Yeah.
Oh.
I know we had a teacher in grade school named Miss Parks.
Mm-hmm.
Now my daughter, she couldn't understand why they just had everybody almost in the same room. There was a big room,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems to me as if they had these doors that went together like that, and that's
Like bifold doors, maybe
Yeah.
to separate the rooms?
Yeah,
And is that the schoolhouse in Buxton or the one in Kinnikeet?
in Kincaid.
Kinnikeet.
Coastal Voices thanks the storytellers, the community oral historians, and Radio Hatters for their support. And we thank you for joining us this evening. Good night.